Say the Brooks and Banks show.
You can start the show where everything matters, nothing matters, okay? Yeah. What up?
What up, y'all? It's the Brooks and Banks show.
That's right, baby.
The show where everything matters and
Nothing matters.
That's right, baby.
Episode 13. The not so unlucky episode.
That's right. Yeah, I've always thought about how 13, it's kind of funny how people think that's an unlucky number when in numerology it's a very solid number.
Oh, yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that suggests that 13 is not unlucky. It's so weird. Have you ever been in a building that doesn't have a 13th floor?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That always used to...
Yeah, it's a thing.
Talk about superstition, man. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. It's for real. But again, I mean, the basic numerology of 13 is just that it's 1 + 3, which is 4, which is all about foundation.
But anyway, man, a lot of stuff been happening recently since our last episode.
Yep,
A
definitely.
lot of stuff. I mean, it's just been... we had the eclipse a few days ago.
That's right.
Yep, that was cool. Got to see it. Got to see it without solar glasses and with solar glasses.
Yeah, I did a little bit of both also.
I remember you saying something, like everybody was like, don't look at the sun, it damages your eyes. And look, I don't want to say that I don't believe that the sun won't damage your eyes. Obviously, if you like stare into it, it can like damage your eyes.
It hurts.
Probably what a lot of things in ancient biblical texts talk about, or like seeing the power of God, like you can't like handle it or something like that, especially when you have people who worship sun gods back in the day and stuff like that. But I was telling people like, that's right, because, out of the millennia that humans have been alive, can't look at the sun. It would destroy you.
Yeah,
and you would just be blinded.
Well, there's a lot of people have theories that solar flares and solar light is essentially like what gives us downloads from higher consciousness, source, God, what have you. But there's also a lot of, like in a lot of Native American traditions, when it comes to the eclipse, like they prefer to not look at it. They go inside. They kind of go into reverence mode, meditative mode. They try not to like laugh and celebrate and things like that, kind of more of like a retrospective time.
That's wild. And do you think this was like during times where they already mathematically knew when and where it was coming? Because to me, with the signs and just, I guess if you're looking at the moon,
that's
and
an interesting question.
The trajectory of it every day.
That's an interesting question, because some ancient civilizations definitely had astrological, and they were mapping the stars.
Right, exactly.
However, a lot of the Native American and indigenous,
like South American,
South America, even Aboriginal, like we're talking like ancient stuff. A lot of them like knew where Sirius was, Sirius B, the constellation, or knew where Orion was, but they said we only know this because the gods came down and told us where.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, dude, it was You even did a little. You went to the beach afterward, like after the eclipse, and met up with some people.
I met up with some homies at the beach, and so I like to just partake in every aspect of the eclipse, and I get why certain cultures have reverence to it, but like no matter how you chop it up, when everybody's focused on the same event at the same time, magical things happen.
Yeah,
it's been proven in in sports and in all types of strange phenomenon that happen when lots of conscious perspectives are focusing on one thing. So I think that in a sense is something to be revered and appreciated and respected. And then also, I went to the beach to get grounded, and I did a little offering kind of ceremony with myself, just kind of a sacrifice, if you will. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just a crystal that I had for a while, but it wasn't worthless. It meant something to me, but I gave it up as a sacrifice or an offering to Mother Nature.
Revelation. That's
just right. Because the whole thing about the eclipse is it's about transition. It's about new beginnings. So it's like, hey, I don't need this anymore. Thank you for giving it to me. Now it's yours again, and I open up that space for new energy to come in now.
Something that I thought about was, when we think about just something like the effects that celestial bodies can have on our atmosphere and on the Earth on a physical, scientific level.
Yeah.
There is like a lot of evidence now that the moon affects more than just huge bodies of water, including feminine and I think male like reproductive fluids.
Yeah, this ain't new.
Right. I read that, and this is true. You can look this up. I mean, I don't know how much deeper they went into this other than they know that this happened, that a nurse at a hospital started noticing that trauma patients were bleeding out a lot more and bleeding in surgery more during full moons. And then certain doctors started taking notice of it and like documenting it, and it didn't match
well, yeah.
up.
And I think, like I've seen a lot of things kind of like debunking things like astrology, which, for me, like it's all brain food for me. I like to look at it from every side. I like to look at the scientific side. Yeah. I like to look at the spiritual side. I like to look at really just anything wild also. Just I like to have a round perspective of it. And like, a lot of stuff will say, for instance, that like Mercury in retrograde, scientists say, okay, that's absolute bullshit because Mercury's actually not moving backwards. It only looks like it's moving backwards. So the fact that that would affect you in any way. But here's the thing. Science is meant to be from an objective point of view. Astrology is meant to be subjective.
Right.
All astrologers don't believe that Mercury is actually moving in reverse. We know that it only appears to be moving in reverse, which if you knew anything about astrology, you would understand that the metaphor attached to that is that logic of it appearing to be moving in reverse is part of the logic. And when you read your horoscope of when it's in retrograde, it's not about that communication goes haywire. It's that it appears to be right. You know what I mean? So again, there's so many different deeper levels to it. But even if you go, when people say, I don't understand how the planets could affect me or make my personality or change the way I feel and all this kind of stuff. But it's like, how can something so far away affect me? How do we get sunburned?
Yeah. Well, that's because of the sun. Its rays come. It's funny when
they're a planet.
When it's something that
true.
You've been explained that you accept and understand. Then it's easier for you to accept and understand that. And things that aren't of that, it's hard to accept and understand. But sorry, going with that, how do you think this? If you're going with that, let's go deeper and deeper and deeper with that same school of thought. How do you think we got here?
Yes. No matter how you look at it, everything's connected, right? And if every planet in our solar system wasn't moving exactly how it is, and if every galaxy and
then we would not be exactly how we are.
Exactly. So it's like it's all perfect. So to say that one does not affect the other is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But again, science is meant to be objective, while astrology and a lot of spiritual practices are meant to be subjective, which I think is kind of going to be a little bit of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so that goes kind of what we wanted to talk about tonight. So most people know that the world of science, and especially when it comes to the universal language that most scientists accept, and physicists and astrophysicists, is the language of math, right?
Yeah,
like that's like the universal like language. Like,
absolutely.
There's even like movies like I think Contact, or like the way that they're like communicating with them at first has to do with like mathematics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I'm terrible at, and I know nothing really about it. Like, my math goes to like algebra, and then after that, it's just like theory. But
that's interesting that you said theory, though, because all math is theory.
It's
right. Funny that you say that, because literally with math, you have to give it a scope and a range, like a limitation. Mm-hmm. Like think about when you do algebra, you always know what it equals. Mm-hmm. You're trying to figure out what plus what equals that.
Which works great in this realm. So
that's what we're going to talk about a little bit, because me personally, I love science. And
I believe in science.
I also love alternative sciences, and I also love spirituality, and I love mysticism and higher consciousness, and really finding the links between them all, which is really what we all need to be doing. Every spiritual person needs to be doing more science. Every science person needs to be doing a little bit more spiritual. We all need to kind of find.
Do you know what's funny? Ground. That was my almost my obsession with Kung Fu.
That's right.
That's
beautiful,
because I consider myself to be very practical, but I've always had this kind of like attraction and synchronicities to some of the like mysticisms like surrounding some of these martial arts practices and stuff like that.
It's magic, bro.
And I almost wanted to like debunk stuff or like see stuff from my, it's like almost the whole time I was like trying to like prove, and
it's very ethos is involved in that.
We've talked about it before in this podcast, but this is so strange. Everyone's journey is different, but I think Kung Fu was one of the first things that really opened up my mind to, oh shit, they're like, maybe someone can't, I haven't seen someone summon a ball of chi and shoot it at me or like knock me out from far away without touching me. But I've definitely felt motherfuckers touch me and feel like electricity shot through me.
Right.
And hit me in certain spots where I was paralyzed and couldn't move my arm just because they knew how to like hit nerves and stuff like that. Well, and did experience things with chi as far as like in my body, which made me go, if that's possible. And then learning how to mix that into like your brain and mix it into meditation.
You give me the chills because like the first,
and it's the same thing with science and math and mysticism.
It's just in a different. Okay, it's in a different box. So this is kind of what I want to talk about.
I should say. Like,
and when we've had meditation experiences where static electricity has like popped off of us, you know what I mean, and things like that, which you know you could say like, oh, that's because you didn't put a dryer sheet in with your clothes.
And by the way, and this isn't to like say that like, okay, yes, we are special, but it's not a braggadocious thing or like I truly, and I think you feel the same way, that almost everybody has some special thing or trait that they can all tap into, and some people multiple things.
Yeah.
And we're all here for a different reason and a different purpose.
And it's all beautiful.
And it's all beautiful. And we all have that. And I do think that there are people on different journeys who have been able to access these things and are better suited to spread the message and open up other people.
Yeah.
And motivate other people. And that's kind of more why I get so excited and talk about these things on this podcast. I don't want anyone to think that it's like a bragging thing. It's an excitement thing.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Yeah, everything's everything, baby.
Disclaimer.
So like something, the major gist of like what I've been consuming lately is a lot of new theories that are coming out in math and physics that are basically saying that the conventional model of time and space is a doomed model. Not that we're not saying that the model of time and space is not useful.
Can you run us through real quick a quick overview of the model of time and space?
Absolutely. But let me just say this, that this new theory is saying that the model of time and space, relativity that Einstein came up with, we're not saying that model isn't useful and isn't true. What the new math is saying is that it's not the base reality. Okay? So when we're talking about time and space, you know, so his theory of relativity basically, like, you know, it gives like an assumption basically that like, you know, let me assume that there is a Big Bang. Here's the scope of the Big Bang, and here's the range. Even though so there's certain
and within these parameters,
basically it's based on a miracle, right? So
that we don't necessarily have proof that happened. But anyway, regardless,
the miracle, whatever. Regardless, my point is that okay. So time and space. So the whole thing is that when you zoom in 10 to the minus 33 centimeters, the math and the laws of time and space completely disintegrate. They do not exist. That's all. And they knew this a year after Einstein came out with the theory. They discovered this. And also when we're talking about the time, it's 10 to the minus 43 milliseconds, I think.
Now, I'm sure someone has asked this, and I know nothing about math. Is there some sort of change in the equation when we go subatomic?
So that's the thing, is that like, no, it's just that the laws don't exist anymore. The math cannot go further than that. And the representation through the scientific methods, microscopes and you know, CERN collider, hadron colliders and stuff like that has proven that like there's nothing there. Right? So
maybe it's nothing that we can see yet either. And there's a lot of stuff
but that's the thing. So there's nothing we could see, but the math says that time and space breaks down. Okay, so let's not get hung up on that, because that's what the math says. Okay, so in this new theory it's not poo-pooing Darwinism, and it's not poo-pooing Einstein's theory of relativity in time and space. What this new theory is saying is that that is not the fundamental reality. That this reality of physical things is a projection, essentially, from a higher realm outside of time and space. And this is science now. And the reason why they've come up with these conclusions is because mathematicians and theoretical physicists have found, through mathematics, shapes outside of time and space. So
how does that make sense?
Okay, so like geometry is all numbers, basically, right? But when you put the numbers on a line, then you get a beautiful shape, right? So through the math, they're able to conceive everything that we have in space-time and physics can all be proven with math, which is why it's science, because it can be proven. Again, where does it starts with a miracle, but then after the miracle, all these things can be proven. Okay, so again, so the whole theory is that this is what's so cool about it, is that and the scientists recognize that they're teetering with what spiritualists have been saying for thousands of years, which is that it appears that consciousness is this thing that's outside of space and time, and that it's an infinite singular, it's one consciousness that is essentially putting on a headset, an interface, and that's what all things are. You, me, plants, animal life, everything, right? It's like putting on an interface to basically narrow down all the infinite possibilities of experience into something that you can actually comprehend.
That is so wild.
Now, and to explore on that a little bit more, it's already been proven that we only see on the light spectrum 0.0035 fucking percent of the light spectrum.
Repeat that.
Let's just think about this for a second.
Rewind.
We only perceive 0.0035% of the entire light spectrum.
So what we can actually see as far as what light from the universe provides, we can see,
and all physical matter is made of photons, which is light,
is less than 1%.
Way less than 1%. Way less than 1%. We're a third of a third of a third. Like, you know what I mean? So, and that's just vision.
It really makes you wonder about things like with, all these ancient cultures and stuff talk about with the third eye, or people who have extra sensory perceptions.
Yeah.
Even a 0.0001% would be
for
a
me,
significant bump in what we
just putting together everything we just discussed. And this is science-based stuff, but coming from, you and I have both have had experiences where we've felt the oneness consciousness, either meditation. I had a near-death experience where I had that oneness of knowing that it's all one thing.
When you did DMT and you felt yourself in what you called the void, did that feel like you were outside of
No. I mean, what do you mean? No, it felt. What do you mean? And outside of
what? Do you feel like you're outside of time and space? I've always tripped out on the concept of the universe, because my brain just keeps going on this infinite double mirror of what's outside of that. Well, then something has to be outside of that. Well, then something has to be outside of that.
Yeah.
What is it held in?
So
and it kind of goes along with what you're saying about
that thing that you just said is something that everybody has pondered on at one point, right? And
they haven't.
For me, no. The thing of being what made
the
God,
Russian,
then
the
what
Russian
made that,
doll,
then what made that, then what made that. So that is literally the reason why in these theories that why we exist in this 3D reality with physical things, because it's a box for us to understand. And
are you saying that we are each of us some sort of connection to this one source's consciousness that it is? Do you think there's more than obviously there has to be the possibility that there's more than one video game that this consciousness is playing then, right?
Yeah, we're the three.
We're the video game. Is that what people would explain with like aliens and phasing and like in dimensions?
We are we are the headset that you put on when you want to come to this place in the 3D reality. And then there are, I mean, think about it. There's fourth, fifth, sixth dimensions, densities, infinite ways. There's, we talk about seeing ghosts and spirits and different dimensions when you're sleeping, which sleeping is just, we know so little about it in the different places that we go and everything like that and what happens in our minds. But but ultimately, when we talk about this interface, and this is the gold here that really hits home, is that when you're on a computer, you're looking at the screen and you have the keyboard and you're sending emails and you're on the internet and you're checking your Instagram or whatever you're doing. We know how to use this thing, but the common person doesn't understand all the transducers and electricity and all the math and the ones and zeros and all the technology that's going on behind the scene, behind the screens, underneath the keyboard, behind the screen. The internet, oh my God, right? Just thinking about if everybody had to know every little fucking thing about all of it, we'd never do anything, right? So that's why we create a facade, a thing to actually make it so that we see less of the truth so that we can have a cohesive experience.
Okay, so then this is gonna really fuck up a lot of shit. I think a lot of people would wonder then what is the point of life?
Yes, I knew that. I love it. And I have it's so it's so funny because here's the thing.
We didn't practice it. We literally it's what 9 o'clock or something right now. We've had a long day. We just needed to do this but we're we should do a podcast. I came home and he's like, man, I've been doing a lot of really cool research on stuff, and he briefly touched on some of this, but we didn't really talk about it other than that.
So what's the point? Okay, so let's take this thought experiment a little bit, all right? Is that, and I've thought about this before, essentially that what's the point of then of being a scientist and being a discoverer, what's the point of all that? Okay, but the truth is that if you do this inner work, this self-discovery, and realize that actually I don't need to be doing all this discovery outside of me. I can do it here. How that will manifest is you creating something and wanting to share it with the world. And it will manifest as science and technology and art and culture and everything. It'll be the same. It'll just be from a different perspective.
Right. So things that I like to think about is humanity and our experience here in this earth or whatever you want to call it right now that we're in, that I'm in. When I think about humanity, let's just say that it came out big time everywhere. That's what it is. We have discovered that this is exactly what it is. And whatever you guys called God was this consciousness outside. And this explains everything. And this is how it is.
We'll never have a theory of everything. It will never happen.
I don't think things would change that much. I don't think the whole world would say, oh, there's no point in me living now. I think people would still do the same self-discovery and realize the worth to it. And it's even if everyone found out, okay, actually we're all in a video game simulation, you still have your free will. And you see, everything's the same, but we discovered that this is a video game being controlled by someone else.
Well, again, I mean, there's just no way to ever prove it 100%. There's no way to ever prove anything 100%, which is what keeps us going.
But how many people out there are so hung up and let their lives be determined by their perception of their certain religion or what God is or all these things. Would they feel that they have no purpose, or would they if they found out some scientific proof?
Here's what I think is and
it's been happening since the beginning of time.
Yeah, and that's why I think what's interesting about it all is that the consciousness, the one consciousness, does truly want to experience everything. So, yeah, there probably will be some people that do that.
You know what's wild?
And you know what? It's perfect.
Yeah, you know what's wild is that the more that I've been accepting the theory of consciousness or the universe or life and us playing itself out to experience, the more
experience itself.
To experience itself, the less scared I am of things, and the more I'm able to accept things for how they are. And I don't mean accept that like, oh, it's fucked up. It is what it is. The world's fucked up. Tough. Get a helmet. Like, I don't really mean it like that so much. I mean it like, yes, there's evil. Yes, there's bad stuff. Yes, there's greed. Yes, just like, yes, there's good. Yes, there's positivity. Yes, there's like strength. Yes, there's like, and that is how it is, and that's how it's always been. It seems to make it a lot easier to navigate things.
Yeah, and it's just that, again, like the interface that you put on, like if you're choosing through that interface to only focus on negative, then that's what's going to grow. Yeah. And if you're choosing to focus on the positive, then that's what's going to grow. And I think that
it's helped me not be a victim.
Yeah. Well,
to understand that things are the way they are, I feel like really help people not be victims.
Yeah, and absolutely. And the struggle with like the frustration of not being able to do something to help the world is like a real thing. And to alleviate that, you alleviate that by working on yourself.
Yeah.
Because you realize then if I'm a hypocrite because I can't even help these things that I want to help for, so I got to help myself first. So then I'm in a position to where I can actually help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's all just part of the same growth pattern. But yeah, I think ultimately that, talking about the math again and just that like 100% of anything doesn't like really exist. It's like 100% to have a theory of everything, it won't ever happen because this consciousness is an ever expanding consciousness.
Right.
So it's like I was saying, the roots of a tree can never discover 100% of the earth.
Right.
Because it's embedded within the earth, and the earth is always changing and expanding and adding new and being different. It's just, and so science, ideas, artists are roots of a tree trying to discover the divine feminine of the earth, and the divine feminine just being a metaphorical phrase for the nurturer that gives birth. Whatever that may be, and we all have that within us.
Yeah, man. And I'll be 39 this year, and just in my lifetime, I've seen rapid change in a lot of areas. And I used to notice a lot of these change in these areas and associate them as bad things and be so negative about it.
Yeah.
And now I look at change as like a necessity. And I look at things like the things that I'm into, like let's say music and hip hop. When things started changing in certain genres and eras of music that I was into, man, I was such a hater. I hated it so bad. And looking back on it now, I go, yeah, that needed to happen. Because although I wasn't a fan of a lot of it, and although certain things may have happened to certain people because of it, like certain people made a lot of money that maybe didn't care about the art or the culture, and maybe other people who didn't get as hooked up, the change still needs to happen because that leads to new, beautiful things.
Yes.
And we have to be accepting of it, even if you're not a fan of it and don't like it. But you can't stop the change, man.
Well, no, and it's all of us that want to do change and make change to the universe and to the world. We grew up really into revolutionaries, whether that be musicians or, Che Guevara, Bob Marley, whatever, or, people that were revolutionizing what was the norm. But then what happens is that so many of us that love those revolutionaries, we stay stuck into the tradition of that.
Yeah, man.
Instead of evolving and becoming a revolution.
Yeah, man.
Which means not, how are we ever going to be a revolution over such traditionalists?
Exactly.
It's a yin and yang to it.
And it's not to separate politically people who are, let's not use conservative and liberal. Let's use something like traditional and progressive. But like, there is validity in both. It is yin and yang, and we all need to work together. And it's so cliche and it's so kumbaya, but like, we seem to all be doubling down right now on I can't be wrong.
Picking a side hardcore.
I have to pick a side hardcore and be all in. Like this pack mentality. And like, if you really want to have a pack mentality and feel safe, we need to nurture a culture where we can embrace it and respect each other for our views and work together. Like, if you're a traditionalist and a conservative, I believe there's a place for things to be conserved and for you to practice your traditions. And you have a right to. And I think that we also have a right to be constantly working on change. And we as people, regardless of laws or country and state, as people can do a good job of coming together and being like, yeah, we've decided that after all, we don't really like this. After all, we do like this.
Yeah.
And it's going to always change. And that's how it always, and there's always going to be bad. There's always going to be death. There's always going to be greed. There's always going to be all these things that are a part of our reality. Mm-hmm. And maybe it was put there for the simulation to make it more interesting.
Well, I mean, that's a deep philosophical thing we're touching on there, which is that, why is there so much suffering? And really, suffering is a projection of contrast. And that sounds very...
what does that mean? A projection of contrast.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and that sounds kind of heartless, but I'm coming from a very high perspective.
And again, you're not saying that people don't suffer.
No.
And you're not saying that you aren't sympathetic to those who are suffering.
Correct.
But it's almost...
And I'm not saying it's an illusion.
But everything has like a symbolism to it almost also. Like that reflects something that if it touches you a certain way, it usually is a reflection of something within
the dualistic nature of our universe, yin and yang, light and dark. And again, it comes from this idea of consciousness wanting to know itself. One thing wanting to know itself. How can one thing know itself? It cannot. It must have its opposite, contrast. It must have,
right? Okay.
Like even like contrast in my face,
gotcha,
gives me depth, right? So
we couldn't have bliss. We couldn't have bliss without suffering.
And that's such a cop out when people say that. But I mean, it's not. It's that we can create a reality that has less suffering, but everything must always have its opposite. So to create this very blissful state is one where, or this very let's say balanced state is one where there's not a ton of happiness and there's not a ton of suffering and sadness either. Wow. Right? You know what I mean? So like this,
you see why these ancient
which
people,
is like, that middle is God. That and that is that thing that we experienced when we were in that state, either in meditation or whatever. When you're in that state of collective consciousness, of one with everything, it's amazing, and then it gets kind of boring.
Right.
Because it's just amazing. And
what do you do afterward?
No contrast.
You come back.
And it's not like we go, this is amazing, I'm a murderer, to have contrast. No, that's not how it manifests, right?
Right.
But it does manifest of, I'm light and I'm vibrant and this is amazing. Oh, this is dark. This is scary. I don't know what this is. But the darkness goes, what are you? And the light goes, oh, I'm light. Can't you see? And I can't know myself amongst myself. And neither can I. But together, we can know one another. So, everything is everything.
That's wild, man. That's some cool stuff. Well, I think that's a good place to end it.
Ashe.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys. Man, we got a little weird on you there, but
that was fun.
It was fun. It was some cool stuff, and man, if if anyone out there has
y'all got any questions or like have any topics we want to like discuss or something, put them in the comments. You know what I'm saying? Drop us an email, holler us on Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah, and just know that, like, you know, everything's in place, man. Like, everything's moving constantly changing. We're in it for a reason. We came here for a reason. Maybe we don't quite all understand it all, but we're getting closer to knowing that someone wants us here. Something wants us here, obviously, you know?
We're leveling up. We're breaking out of old boxes, you know, and go with the flow of the river of life, but remember that you do have arms and legs, that you can manipulate that river, you can manipulate that flow a little bit. And as Bruce Lee said, if everyone helped their neighbor, no one would need help.
Damn.
Brooks and Banks Show, y'all, episode 13. We love
Peace
you.
out.
Show where everything matters, nothing matters, dog.
That's right, baby.
Love y'all.
And the moon and the planets are there. And new hopes for knowledge and peace are there. And therefore, as we set sail